Qur'an chapter 76, Surah Al-Insān, Human, by Sayyid Qutb. Translation by Muhammad Al-Amrani. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Has there not come upon man a time when he was nothing worth remembering? Indeed, we have created man from a mingled drop of fluid that we may try him, and so we made him one who hears and sees. We have indeed shown him the way, whether he be grateful or ungrateful. For the deniers, we have prepared chains, iron collars, and a blazing fire. But behold, the righteous shall drink from a cup tempered with camphor, a spring from which the servants of God shall drink, causing it to gush forth as they please. They fulfill their vows, and they fear a day whose evil is ever spreading. And they give food, though they love it, to the needy, the orphan, and the captive, saying, "We feed you for the sake of God alone. We desire from you neither reward nor thanks. Indeed, we fear from our sustainer a grim, frowning day." And so God will protect them from the evil of that day and grant them radiance and joy, and for their patience he will reward them with a garden and garments of silk. Reclining upon couches, they shall see neither burning sun nor bitter cold, and its shade will be close above them, and its fruits will hang low for their picking. And there shall pass among them vessels of silver, and goblets as clear as crystal, crystal clear, made of silver, filled in perfect measure. And they shall be given to drink a cup mixed with ginger, from a fountain there called Salsabil. And there will pass among them, serving them, immortal youths. When you see them, you would think them scattered pearls. And when you gaze there, you will see bliss and a vast dominion. Upon them shall be garments of fine green silk and brocade, and they will be adorned with bracelets of silver, and their sustainer shall give them a pure drink. Indeed, this is your reward, and your striving has been acknowledged. Indeed, it is we who have sent down this Qur'an to you step by step. So be patient with your sustainer's decree, and do not obey any of them who are sinful or ungrateful. And remember the name of your sustainer morning and evening, and in the night bow down before him, and glorify him throughout its long hours. Verily these people love the fleeting life and leave behind them a heavy day. It is we who created them and strengthened their frame. And when we will, we can replace them entirely with others. Indeed, this is a reminder, so let whomever wills take the way to their sustainer. But you cannot will unless God wills, for God is all-knowing, wise. He admits whomever he wills into his mercy, but for the wrongdoers he has prepared a painful punishment. Some reports suggest that this surah is from Medina, but it is undoubtedly Meccan. Its Meccan character is evident in its themes, its flow, and its unmistakable features. We favour the other narrations that say it is Meccan. In fact, the texture of its verses suggests that it is among the early revelations of Mecca. The vivid descriptions of bliss and the detailed depictions of severe torment, as well as the call to the Prophet, peace be upon him, to be patient with his sustainer's decree and to not obey the sinful or the ungrateful among them, all hint at the early stages of the Prophet's mission, when opposition in Mecca had grown fierce, and the command came for him to remain steadfast, as seen in Surah Al-Qalam, Surah Al-Muzammil, and Surah Al-Mudaththir. Thus, the possibility of this surah being from Medina seems highly unlikely and can be dismissed altogether. This surah in its entirety is a gentle, refreshing call to obedience, to seek refuge in God, to pursue his pleasure, and to reflect upon his blessings. It reminds the soul of his grace, warns of his punishment, and awakens it to the trials he sets forth, revealing his wisdom in creation, in his grace, in his trials, and in his granting of respite. The surah begins with a tender touch upon the human heart. Where were you before you were? Who brought you into existence, making you a being of remembrance after you were nothing at all? Has there not come upon man a time when he was nothing worth mentioning? This is followed by another touch, one that draws attention to the very essence of human origin, and God's wisdom in creation and in endowing man with his faculties. Verily we created man from a mingled drop of fluid, that we may test him, and so we made him hearing, seeing. And then comes a third, a reminder of man's guidance to the path, the assistance offered to him, and how after that he is left to choose his own destiny. We have shown him the way, whether he be grateful or ungrateful. These three subtle touches stir within the heart deep reflection, prompting one to look back, then ahead, and finally to tread carefully as one stands at the crossroads of life's path. After these profound moments of contemplation, the surah raises its voice, calling out to man standing at this junction, warning him of the path leading to the fire and urging him towards the path of paradise. It beckons him with vivid imagery of joy, comfort, and honor. For the disbelievers, we have prepared chains, shackles, and a blazing fire. But the righteous shall drink from a cup spiced with camphor, from a spring of which the servants of God will drink, making it gush forth as they please. Before delving into the pleasures of paradise, the surah paints a portrait of the righteous with words of softness, gentleness, and beauty, befitting the serenity of the bliss they shall enjoy. They fulfill their vows and fear a day whose evil is widespread. And they feed the needy, the orphan, and the captive, though they love the food, saying, "We feed you for the sake of God alone. We desire no reward nor thanks. Indeed, we fear from our sustainer a grim, frowning day." Then the surah reveals the reward for those who bear their responsibilities, who fear the grim day, who give freely despite their own need for sustenance, seeking only the pleasure of God, with no desire for thanks. Their reward, peace, comfort, and unending joy. So God will protect them from the evil of that day and grant them radiance and joy. And for their patience, He will reward them with a garden and garments of silk. Reclining upon couches, they shall neither see scorching heat nor biting cold. Its shade will be close above them, and its fruits shall hang low for their picking. And there shall pass among them vessels of silver, and goblets as clear as crystal, crystal clear, made of silver, filled to measure. And they shall be given to drink a cup spiced with ginger, from a spring therein called Salsabil. And serving them will be eternal youths, whom when you see, you would think them scattered pearls. And when you gaze there, you will see bliss and a vast dominion. Upon them shall be garments of fine green silk and brocade, and they will be adorned with bracelets of silver, and their sustainer shall give them a pure drink. Indeed, this is your reward, and your striving has been acknowledged. And after this scene of serene and gentle joy, the discourse turns to the Prophet, peace be upon him, to affirm his resolve in the face of denial, disbelief, and rejection. It urges him to patience, awaiting God's decree, and to maintain his connection with his sustainer, drawing strength from him as the path grows long. Indeed, we have sent down to you the Qur'an gradually. So be patient with the decree of your sustainer, and do not obey any of them who are sinful or ungrateful. And remember the name of your sustainer morning and evening, and in the night prostrate yourself before him and glorify him for long hours at night. Then the surah shifts to remind those who have turned away of the weighty day they ignore, the day that the righteous fear and prepare for, hinting at how insignificant they are in the sight of God who created them, strengthened them, and could, if he so willed, replace them with another people. It closes by highlighting the outcome of this test, as decreed since the beginning. Verily, these people love the fleeting life and leave behind them a heavy day. It is we who created them and strengthened their frame, and when we will, we can replace them with others. Indeed, this is a reminder, so whoever wills, let them take the way to their sustainer. But you cannot will unless God wills. Indeed, God is all-knowing, wise. He admits whomever he wills into his mercy, but for the wrongdoers he has prepared a painful punishment. Thus the surah begins by recalling the origin of man and God's design in creation based on trial, and it concludes by laying out the consequence of that trial as willed by the divine decree. In doing so, it conveys a sense of purpose behind all life, a purpose that should not be treated with heedlessness. Man is created to be tested, and he is endowed with awareness so that he may succeed in this trial. Between the opening and the conclusion, we encounter one of the most extended depictions of the blessings in paradise, or at least one of the longest if we compare it to the scenes of bliss in Surah Al-Waqi'ah. It is, for the most part, a description of sensory delights, accompanied by acceptance and honour. This detailed and sensual portrayal suggests its early Meccan origin, where the people were still fresh from their days of Jahiliyyah, deeply attached to the pleasures of the senses. Such depictions would captivate them, stir their imaginations and evoke their deepest desires. Even today, this form of enjoyment continues to appeal to certain people, serving as a reward that satisfies their innermost longings. Indeed, God knows His creation and what suits them, as well as what will elevate their hearts and align with their nature and emotions. Yet there exists something higher, more refined, as described in Surah Al-Qiyamah. Faces that day will be radiant, gazing upon their sustainer. God knows what is best for His servants in every situation. Has there not come upon man a period of time when he was nothing worth mentioning? Verily, we created man from a mingled drop of sperm, that we may test him, and so we made him hearing and seeing. Verily, we showed him the way, whether he be grateful or ungrateful. This question at the beginning of the surah is one of affirmation, yet its form invites the human to reflect. Does he not know that there was a time when he was nothing worth mentioning? Should he not contemplate this truth and ponder it deeply? Should this reflection not awaken within him an awareness of the hand that brought him forth onto the stage of life, bathed him in the light of existence, and made him something of note after he had been nothing at all? There are many subtle inspirations woven into this question, stirring a multitude of reflections in the soul. One of these reflections directs the soul to consider the time before man's creation, to envision the universe devoid of his presence. What might it have been like? Man, with his vanity, is prone to forget that this vast universe existed and thrived long before he ever appeared, spanning eons and ages. The universe likely did not anticipate the arrival of a being called man until the moment when God's will brought him into existence. Another reflection focuses on the precise instant when human existence was first breathed into being. One can imagine various possibilities for this moment, known only to God, when this new creation was added to the cosmos, its purpose and role already ordained by God long before it came to be, its place in the great tapestry of the universe carefully measured. Another directs the soul to ponder the hand of divine power that thrust this new being onto the stage of existence, preparing it for its role, equipping it for its task, weaving the threads of its life into the fabric of the cosmos. And in every step that hand remains, holding the thread that ties the human soul to the greater threads of the vast eternal design of creation. Such are the countless insights and reflections that arise from this text, leading the heart to a profound sense of purpose and meaning, both at the moment of origin, throughout the journey, and in the final destination. As for man's continued existence and survival, that is a story of its own. Verily, we created man from a mingled drop of sperm, that we may test him, and so we made him hearing and seeing. These mingled drops are a blend. Perhaps this is a reference to the fusion of the male sperm and the female ovum during conception. Or perhaps it refers to the genetic material within the drop, the inherited traits, what science now calls genes, the carriers of the characteristics that define the human species first, and later the individual traits of the offspring. It is to these genes that we attribute the journey of the human zygote as it develops into a human being, and not the offspring of any other species. It is also to these genes that we ascribe the inheritance of family traits, and perhaps this mingling refers to the various hereditary lines mixed within the drop. Thus, this being was fashioned by the hand of divine power from a mingled drop, not in vain, not by accident, and not for amusement, but to be tested and tried. God knows the nature of this creation, its test and the fruits of its trial, but it is His will that these unfold on the stage of existence, and that the results be woven into the fabric of creation, with consequences that reverberate through the universe. Thus, He endowed man with hearing and sight, granting him the means of perception so that he may receive, respond, understand, judge, and choose. Through these faculties, man navigates his test, based on the choices he makes. Therefore, God's will in the propagation of this species and the continual emergence of its individuals through the means he ordained, the mingling of the drop, was not without wisdom. It carried a purpose, the purpose of testing this creature and determining its worth. Hence man was given the capacity to perceive, to respond, to learn and to choose, and everything in his creation, his endowment with faculties, and his trial in life was measured with precise intent. And so, alongside knowledge, he endowed him with the capacity to choose his path, and he made clear to him the straight way that leads to him. Then he left him free, either to walk upon it or to wander astray into those roads that lead nowhere near God. Verily, we showed him the way, whether he be grateful or ungrateful. God expressed guidance in terms of gratitude, for gratitude is the natural response that stirs the heart of the guided one. Once he realizes that he was once nothing worth mentioning, and that his sustainer willed him to become something of worth, granting him hearing and sight, and bestowing upon him the ability to know, then it is gratitude that first comes to the heart of the believer. And if he does not give thanks, then he falls into the depths of ingratitude, expressed here in a form that intensifies the meaning of denial and rejection. With these three touches, man feels the gravity and precision of his purpose. He understands that he was created for an ultimate aim, that he is tethered to a central axis, and that he has been endowed with knowledge for which he is accountable. He is here to be tested and to undergo trials, not for idle play or neglect. These three brief verses leave him with a wealth of deep reflections, and he emerges from them with a burden of responsibility and a solemnity that changes his view of life, its values, and the meaning of his existence. Thus, these verses transform his outlook on the purpose of his life, his sense of the reality of his being, and his approach to the values of life as a whole. Afterward, the surah begins to outline what awaits man after the trial, depending on whether he chooses the path of gratitude or the path of denial. As for those who reject faith, their fate is briefly mentioned, for the tone of the surah carries an atmosphere of comfort and the allure of soothing bliss. The mention of punishment is merely touched upon. Indeed, we have prepared for the disbelievers chains, shackles, and a blazing fire. Chains for their feet, shackles for their hands, and a blazing fire into which they will be cast, bound and shackled. Yet the narrative quickly turns to the serenity of the bliss awaiting the righteous. Verily, the righteous shall drink from a cup, mixed with camphor, from a fountain where the servants of God drink, causing it to gush forth abundantly. This expression conveys that the drink of the righteous in paradise is mixed with camphor, sipped from a cup filled from a spring that flows for them in abundance. The Arabs of old would mix their wine with camphor at times and with ginger at others to heighten its pleasure. Now they are informed that in paradise there will be a pure drink blended with camphor, flowing in boundless abundance. As for the quality of this drink, it is understood to be far sweeter than any worldly drink, and the pleasure it brings is multiplied and elevated. Yet on this earth we cannot fully grasp the nature of such delight, for these descriptions merely offer a glimpse, a way for us to imagine the unseen, of which only God has complete knowledge. In one verse they are called the righteous, and in the next, the servants of God, a tender expression of honour and closeness to their sustainer, as a sign of their merit and their nearness to him, particularly in the context of eternal bliss and recognition. Then the surah goes on to describe these righteous servants of God, to whom such pleasures have been allotted. They fulfill their vows, and they fear a day whose evil is widespread, and they give food, despite their love for it, to the poor, the orphan, and the captive, saying, "We feed you for the sake of God alone. We desire from you neither reward nor thanks. Truly, we fear from our sustainer a day of grim, frowning distress." This radiant image reveals hearts sincere in their dedication to God's commands, tender with mercy towards his servants. They are selfless, compassionate, and filled with a reverent fear of God, seeking his pleasure and dreading his punishment, inspired by piety and a deep sense of responsibility. They fulfill their vows, meaning they carry out the acts of worship and duties they have resolved upon. They take their obligations seriously, never attempting to escape their responsibilities or shirk their burdens. This is the meaning of their fulfilling their vows. It goes beyond the common understanding of a mere promise or pledge. They fear a day whose evil is widespread, a day whose horrors will touch many of those who fell short or sinned. They fear being caught in its evil, for this is the attitude of the pious, who feel the weight of their obligations and the enormity of their duties. No matter how much they offer in terms of worship and good deeds, they remain ever conscious of their shortcomings and the potential for falling short of God's expectations. And they give food, despite their own desire for it, to the needy, the orphan, and the captive. This verse beautifully portrays the profound sense of compassion, generosity, and goodness embodied in the act of feeding others, even when one is in need of that food oneself. Such hearts cannot be described as desiring the food they offer to the weak and needy unless they too are in need of it. Yet they selflessly choose to give it away to those who need it more. This subtle detail reflects the harshness of the environment in Mecca under the pagans, where little was given to the weak and destitute, even though much was spent on boasting and extravagance. However, the righteous servants of God were like a shaded oasis amidst this barren land, offering food with open hearts, mercy, and sincerity. Their actions were directed towards God, as expressed by their humble words. "We feed you for the sake of God alone. We desire from you neither reward nor thanks. Indeed, we fear from our sustainer a grim and distressful day." Here we witness the mercy flowing from tender hearts, hearts that seek only the pleasure of God. They expect no recompense from people, no gratitude, and they do not seek to elevate themselves above those in need or boast of their kindness. Instead, they fear that grim and frowning day, and through their charity, they seek protection from it. As the prophet, peace be upon him, advised, "Protect yourselves from the fire, even with half a date." Feeding the hungry in such a direct and personal way was the natural expression of this noble and generous emotion, a means of meeting the needs of the poor. Yet, the forms of kindness and charity may change with time and circumstance, and this simple act may take on different expressions. However, what must remain is the sensitivity of the heart, the vitality of compassion, and the desire to do good purely for the sake of God, without any worldly motives of reward or thanks. Though taxes may be organized, social welfare programs instituted, and support systems established for the needy, such measures only fulfill one part of the Islamic ethos that these verses represent. This part is the material sufficiency of those in need, but the other essential aspect is the cultivation of the souls of the givers, elevating them to that lofty level of generosity and purity. This second aspect must not be neglected, nor its value diminished, for Islam is a faith of the heart, a path for the refinement of souls. It is the noble spirit of the giver that benefits both the one who gives and the one who receives, completing the moral education that this religion seeks to instill. Thus, this noble portrayal reflects that exalted sense of compassion. So God shielded them from the evil of that day and granted them radiance and joy. The narrative hastens to assure them of their protection from the day they so feared, offering them reassurance in this life as they received and believed in this Qur'an. Instead of facing a grim and frowning day, they were given joy and brightness as a fitting reward for their fear, their reverence, and the tender beauty of their hearts. Then the description of the delights of paradise continues, and he rewarded them for their patience with a garden and garments of silk. A garden they shall dwell in, and silk they shall wear. Reclining on couches, they will see neither scorching heat nor bitter cold. They rest in comfort, secure and at ease, with a gentle, soft atmosphere surrounding them, neither the burning heat of the sun nor the piercing chill of cold. It is a world beyond ours, without the sun we know, and without its counterparts. This is another realm entirely, and its shade will be close over them, and its fruit will hang low for easy reach. When the shade is near and the fruits hang low, it is the ultimate relaxation and ease, a vision of serenity extending as far as the imagination can reach. Such is the general image of the garden God has prepared for his righteous servants, those who displayed such delicate, radiant character in this world. The narrative then turns to describe more of the blessings and pleasures they enjoy. And there will be passed around them vessels of silver and cups as clear as glass, crystal clear though made of silver, filled to exact measure. They enjoy their drinks in comfort, reclining on couches under the close shade and hanging fruits as silver vessels and crystal clear cups are passed around. Cups of silver, but so transparent as to resemble glass, a marvel unknown to this world. These cups are of perfect size, designed to enhance both enjoyment and beauty. The drinks are mixed with ginger, just as they were earlier mixed with camphor, and they are filled from a flowing spring known as Salsabil, renowned for its sweetness and its ease for the drinkers. And as an added delight, those who serve these cups and vessels of drink are youthful boys, radiant in their beauty, untouched by the passage of time, immune to the wear of years. They remain forever in the bloom of youthful grace and freshness, like pearls scattered in all directions. And there shall circulate among them immortal youths. When you see them, you would think them scattered pearls. The narrative then gathers the strands of this scene into a single stroke, casting an all-encompassing glance that sums up the impact on both heart and sight. And when you look there, you will behold bliss and a vast dominion. Bliss and a great dominion. This is the life of the righteous, the near ones to God, his devoted servants, a general and all-encompassing image of their reward. Then the narrative picks a specific aspect of this bliss and dominion, as if to explain and elaborate upon this grand description. Upon them will be garments of fine green silk and rich brocade, and they will be adorned with bracelets of silver, and their sustainer will give them a pure drink. The fine silk is delicate, while the brocade is thick and luxurious, and they are dressed in this splendour and luxury, receiving it all from their sustainer, a generous gift from the most generous. This divine bestowal adds yet another layer to the majesty of this reward. Then they receive, along with these gifts, words of affection and honour. Indeed, this is your reward, and your effort has been appreciated. They receive these words from the highest realm, and they alone are enough to equal all the delights, adding a new depth of value to everything they enjoy. Thus the detailed portrayal ends with this moving call to the hearts, a call toward that pure bliss and to flee from the chains, shackles and the blazing fire. There are two paths, one leading to this garden and the other leading to the fire. After this captivating invitation to the blissful and lush paradise, the surah turns to address the condition of the idolaters, who persist in stubbornness and denial. They fail to grasp the truth of the message and attempt to bargain with the Prophet, peace be upon him, hoping he might relent or compromise on what disturbs them. Between their bargaining with the Prophet, their persecution of his followers, their obstruction of God's path, and their rejection of the goodness, paradise, and ultimate reward, the surah now presents its final section in the manner of the Qur'an. Verily it is we who have sent down the Qur'an to you in stages. So be patient with your sustainer's decree, and do not obey any sinner or disbeliever among them. And remember the name of your sustainer in the morning and in the evening and during the night. Prostrate before him and glorify him for a long part of the night. These 4 verses contain a profound truth, one of the great realities of faith. It is a truth that those who call to God must live within for a long time, deeply understanding its meanings and contemplating its immense spiritual, psychological and practical implications. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was not merely confronting a system of belief when he called the pagans to the worship of God alone. If it had been only about belief, the struggle would have been much simpler, for their shaky and feeble creed could not withstand the clarity and strength of the Islamic message. What truly drove their fierce opposition, as recounted in various places in the Qur'an and historical narratives, were the complex circumstances surrounding their belief system. It was the social status, the pride in the values upheld by their society, and the material interest tied to their way of life that formed the primary barrier, causing them to cling to their flimsy and evidently false creed in the face of Islam's manifest truth. The pleasures, desires and indulgences of their pre-Islamic way of life further intensified their resistance. The new faith, with its moral and ethical imperatives, sought to curb unchecked desires and wild impulses, replacing them with higher values that did not allow for the reckless indulgence they were accustomed to. These same reasons, whether related to social standing, economic interests, the comfort of established traditions, or the freedom from moral constraints, have always stood in opposition to the call of faith, in every land and in every age. These are the enduring elements in the struggle of belief, making it a difficult, unyielding battle that is not easily won, and ensuring that the steadfastness required to uphold this faith is one of the heaviest burdens. Thus, those who call to the path of God in any time or place must dwell long upon the great truth contained in these verses and reflect on the context in which they were revealed to the prophet, peace be upon him. For it is the same struggle faced by every caller to God, in every land and every era. The messenger of God, peace be upon him, received the charge from his sustainer to warn, and it was said to him, "O you who are wrapped in a mantle, rise and warn." And so, when he rose to fulfill this command, he was confronted by the forces and causes that held his people back from the new call. Though they were inwardly aware of the weakness and frailty of their ways, they clung to them stubbornly, leading to fierce resistance and a determined defense of their beliefs, status, interests, familiar way of life, and the pleasures and desires that the new message threatened most severely. This fierce defense took various forms, beginning with the persecution of the small group of believers who had responded to the new call and attempting to turn them away from their faith through torture and threats. Then came the distortion of this faith, casting clouds of doubt around it and its prophet, peace be upon him, through every conceivable accusation and method so that others would not be drawn to it. For preventing new believers from joining the banner of faith was far easier than seducing those who had already tasted its truth and sweetness. At the same time, they sought to entice the prophet himself, peace be upon him, alongside their threats and harm by offering various forms of temptation, hoping he might meet them halfway, cease the relentless attack on their beliefs, traditions, and ways of life, and come to a compromise acceptable to both. Just as people are accustomed to meeting in the middle when disputes arise over worldly interests and gains, these same methods, or their likenesses, are the ones faced by every caller to the path of God in every land and every generation. The prophet, peace be upon him, though he was a messenger, safeguarded from temptation by God and protected from the harm of people, was still a human being. He faced, and it is he who sent down the Qur'an. It has no other origin, and its truth cannot be mixed with anything that does not flow from this divine fountain. Anything besides this source does not draw from it, nor can anything be borrowed from it for this faith. Nothing external may be mixed with its pure essence. And the same God who sent down the Qur'an and charged him with this mission will never abandon it, nor the one calling to it, for it is he who has assigned him and revealed the Qur'an to him. Yet falsehood boasts, evil expands, believers suffer harm, and tribulation lies in wait for them. The enemies of the faith have the power to obstruct God's path and persist in doing so. They remain determined in their false beliefs, customs, and corrupted ways. They offer compromise, proposing to divide the land between them to meet halfway, an offer that in such dire circumstances would be difficult to refuse. Here comes the second reminder. So be patient with the command of your sustainer, and do not obey any sinner or disbeliever among them. The affairs of the world are bound by God's decree. He allows falsehood to persist, gives respite to evil, and prolongs the trial and tribulation of the believers for a wisdom known only to him, by which his decree is fulfilled and his judgment carried out. So be patient with your sustainer's command until his appointed time comes. Be patient in the face of harm and trials. Be patient as falsehood seems to prevail and evil swells, and be even more patient with the truth that has been revealed to you in the Qur'an. Be patient and do not listen to their offers of compromise, of meeting halfway at the expense of your faith. And do not obey any sinner or disbeliever among them, for they do not call you to goodness or righteousness, but rather they are sinners and disbelievers. When they invite you to meet them halfway, they invite you to sin and disbelief. When they offer what they think will please and tempt you, it is but a deception. They had once tempted him with the lust for power, with the desire for wealth, and with the pleasures of the flesh. They offered him leadership, promising to make him wealthier than any among them, and even tempted him with the most beautiful women, as Utbah ibn Rabia had once said to him, "Abandon this affair, and I will marry you to my daughter, for she is among the most beautiful women of Quraysh." These are the same desires that the followers of falsehood offer to purchase the callers to truth in every land and every generation. So be patient with the command of your sustainer, and do not follow any sinner or disbeliever among them. For there can be no meeting point between you and them, no bridge can be built across the vast chasm that separates your way from theirs, your vision of existence from theirs, your truth from their falsehood, your faith from their disbelief, your light from their darkness, your knowledge of the truth from their jahiliyyah. Be patient, even if the wait is long, the trial severe, the temptation strong, and the path stretched far ahead. But patience is a burden, and sustenance is needed, strength to carry one through. And remember the name of your sustainer morning and evening, and in the night. Prostrate to him and glorify him long into the night. This is your provision. Remember your sustainer's name at dawn and dusk. Prostrate to him in the night, and glorify him through long hours. It is the connection to the source of the Qur'an that was revealed to you, the one who charged you with this mission. It is he who is the fountain of strength and the provider of all sustenance. This connection, through remembrance, worship, prayer, and long glorifications, nourishes the soul, for the road is long and the burden is heavy. Much provision is required and great assistance is needed. It is found there where the servant meets their sustainer in solitude, in whispered communion, in yearning and closeness. From this bond, weariness turns to rest, weakness to strength, and smallness to grandeur. The soul sheds the trivial distractions and concerns, and instead beholds the magnitude of the mission, the weight of the trust. Thus all the thorns along the path seem insignificant in comparison to the task at hand. God is merciful. He tasked his servant with the mission, revealed the Qur'an to him, and understood the burdens and thorns along the way. He did not leave his prophet, peace be upon him, without help or support. This is the very sustenance he knew to be the true and worthy provision for such an arduous journey down this thorn-filled path. And this is the provision for all who call to the way of God in every land and every generation. For it is one call and the circumstances are the same. The falsehood that opposes it remains unchanged, and the reasons behind this opposition are the same. The methods of falsehood are the same, so let the methods of truth be those which God has shown to be suited for this path. The truth that the bearers of God's message must live by is the one God taught his first messenger, peace be upon him, that this call descends from God alone. He is its owner. The truth revealed in it cannot be mixed with the falsehood that sinners and disbelievers invite you to. There's no way to combine the two, nor to meet halfway between those standing on the truth and those standing on falsehood. These are two separate paths, and they will never meet. And even if falsehood, in its power and numbers, seems to prevail over the few and weak believers for a wisdom that God knows, then patience is the answer until God's judgment arrives. The provision for this journey is found in seeking aid from God, in prayer and long glorifications, in the quiet of the night. This is the sustenance assured for those travelling down this path. This is a profound truth that all who walk this road must grasp and live by. Then the passage emphasizes the separation between the way of the messenger, peace be upon him, and the way of Jahiliyyah. It reveals their blindness to their own good, their small-minded concerns, and their trivial ambitions. God says, "Indeed they love the fleeting world and leave behind a heavy day." These people, with their petty aspirations, their shallow desires, so preoccupied with the immediate fleeting world while abandoning behind them a day of immense weight, a day heavy with its responsibilities, heavy with its consequences, heavy in the scales of truth. These people are not to be followed, nor are their ways to be imitated. There can be no meeting of hearts or minds between them and the believers, no shared goal or end. Their wealth, power and pleasures are of the fleeting world, insignificant and temporary, while they themselves are small and insignificant. The verse subtly points to their heedlessness in recognizing what is good for them. They choose the fleeting world and leave behind that heavy day awaiting them, where chains, shackles and the blazing fire await them after a harsh reckoning. This verse reassures the prophet, peace be upon him, and the believers with him, in the face of those who are consumed by their love for this world. It also serves as a veiled threat to those who cling to the fleeting, warning them of the heavy day to come. Then it belittles their importance before God, who gave them the power and strength they boast of, and who is capable of taking it away and replacing them with others. Yet he allows them to continue for a wisdom decreed long ago. It is we who created them and strengthened their forms, and when we will, we can replace them with others like them. This reminder directs their attention to the source of their strength, and even their very existence. It also comforts the believers who are few and weak, with the knowledge that the giver of all power is the one to whom they belong, the one whose message they carry. This affirms in their hearts the reality of God's decree and the wisdom behind it, a wisdom guiding events until God's judgment is fulfilled, and he is the best of judges. And if we so will, we can replace them with others like them. For their strength cannot overwhelm God. It is he who created them and endowed them with power, and he is fully capable of bringing forth others in their place. If he grants them respite and does not replace them, it is out of his grace and mercy, and it is his decree and wisdom at work. Thus this verse serves to further strengthen the heart of the messenger, peace be upon him and those with him, affirming the truth of their stance as well as the stance of others. It is also a reminder to those engrossed in the fleeting pleasures of this world, who are deceived by the might of their power, to remember the blessings of God, which they squander without gratitude. They must feel the trial hidden behind these blessings, a trial that was decreed for them at the beginning of this chapter. It awakens them to the opportunities still available to them, as the Qur'an is offered to them, and this very chapter reminds them. Indeed, this is a reminder, so whoever wills, let him take a path to his sustainer. This call is followed by a reminder that all will and power ultimately return to God, and that the final direction, the ultimate surrender, must be to him alone. It is a call for humanity to abandon reliance on their own power, and instead turn to his, to seek refuge in his will, for this is the essence of Islam in its deepest truth. And you do not will except that God wills. Indeed, God is ever knowing, ever wise. This is so that the hearts of human beings may understand that God is the true actor, the sovereign, the all-powerful. In learning this, they will know how to turn to him and submit to his decree. This is the field in which this great truth is played out in such verses, while affirming that God has granted them the ability to distinguish between truth and falsehood, to choose one path or the other in accordance with his will. He alone knows the reality of hearts, and he has aided his servants by bestowing upon them the gift of discernment, the clear path, the sending of messengers, and the revelation of the Qur'an. Yet all of this returns to the decree of God, to which the seeker turns for guidance and support. Without recognizing the supreme power that governs all, without seeking its aid and assistance, there is no guidance, no remembrance, no success in finding the way to goodness. Thus, he admits whom he wills into his mercy, but for the wrongdoers he has prepared a painful punishment. His will is absolute, and it governs all things. It is by his will that he admits into his mercy those who seek refuge in him, who turn to him for help in obedience and guidance. As for the wrongdoers, he has prepared for them a painful punishment. He has granted them time, given them respite, only for them to meet their end in this grievous torment. This conclusion harmonizes with the beginning of the chapter, painting the full picture of the trial for which God created mankind from a mere drop of mixed fluids. He endowed them with hearing and sight, and he guided them along the way, either toward paradise or toward the fire.